Look at this screen. See those numbers? $10,000. You could buy a car, a vacation, a year's worth of groceries with that. But where are they? Where is that 10,000? In metal? In paper? No, they are nowhere. Just a string of zeros and ones on a server that could be in a data center in Virginia, or maybe floating in the cloud with no physical address at all. You've never seen that money, and yet you're willing to work until you sweat, humiliate yourself, compromise your conscience, just to make those numbers a little bigger. 26 centuries ago, some merchant in Sardis stared at a piece of metal stamped with a lion. And he believed, just as you do, that real power lay behind it. He couldn't eat that coin. He couldn't warm himself with it. But he knew if he gave it away, he'd get grain, oil, slaves. Why? What made him believe? This is the story of the most dangerous and most brilliant illusion humanity ever invented, money. And of the man who turned useless yellow sand into a weapon capable of crushing empires. And then he himself fell by that same weapon. Imagine a world without coins, without bills, without numbers on a screen. That's how humanity lived for tens of thousands of years. People exchanged things, a goat for a sack of grain, a hide for an arrowhead. That's barter, and it worked, as long as your neighbor actually wanted your goat. But what if you have a goat, and your neighbor needs not a goat, but a clay jug? You need to find someone who wants your goat, trade it for a hide, then the hide for a jug, and only then the jug for grain. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. In plain language, you can starve in the middle of plenty, just because no one wants exactly what you have to offer. In small villages, it's still tolerable, but cities grow, trade routes stretch thousands of miles, and barter begins to crack. The world needed something that everyone would accept, not because it was useful in itself, but because it could be exchanged for anything. Humanity tried dozens of options. Cowrie shells in Africa, giant stone discs on the Pacific Islands, cattle in the Middle East. The word capital comes from Latin capit, meaning head, as in heads of cattle. And all of them rested on one thing: a shell doesn't warm you, doesn't feed you. But if 100 people agree that it's worth a sack of grain, it is. If they change their minds tomorrow, it becomes trash. Value is not a physical property of things, it is a collective decision. And once you understand that, a question arises: who makes that decision? Who can make everyone believe all at once? 2,700 years ago, in what is now Western Turkey, there was a kingdom called Lydia, small, not rich in land. But it had one unique advantage: the Pactolus River, flowing from Mount Tmolus, carried in its sand grains of electrum, a natural alloy of gold and silver. This metal was rare and already alloyed. Lydians had panned for it for centuries, melting the grains into ingots. Electrum was valued. But it had a fatal flaw: the proportion of gold and silver varied from one piece to the next. In one 80% gold, in the next 40, you couldn't tell by looking. A merchant receiving such an ingot didn't know its true worth. Arguments followed. Bite it, weigh it, break it open to check. Trade went on, but with constant mutual distrust. The world was missing one thing: a standard. A measure everyone would accept without argument. And in 560 BC, a man ascended the throne of Lydia whose name would become synonymous with incredible wealth: Croesus. Croesus inherited not just the throne, but vast gold reserves from his father Oluwates. The phrase "rich as Croesus" still lives in English today. But Croesus wasn't just a greedy king. He understood: a mountain of metal in a treasury isn't power. Power is when others recognize your metal, and Lydia was squeezed between a rising Persia in the east and Greek cities in the west. Wars and land give control over territory, but not over every transaction in the region. Croesus did something no one had ever done systematically. He ordered the separation of electrum into pure components by heating the metal with lead, oxidizing impurities away, leaving pure gold at the bottom. Silver was refined separately. For the first time in the region, they got pure gold and pure silver of known fineness. In Sardis, the capital, these metals were minted into coins of a standard weight, gold staters of about 10.7 grams. Croesus fixed the exchange rate between gold and silver, creating the world's first bimetallic system. But the most ingenious part wasn't the gold or the weight. The most ingenious part was the design. On every coin, Croesus ordered the image of a lion's head opposite a bull, an ancient symbol of royal power, and that image carried a message. You no longer need to weigh this metal. You don't need to bite it. You don't need to argue about its purity. My stamp is here, the king's stamp, and that's enough. It worked. Merchants or practical people were tired of endless disputes. They accepted the coin not because it was prettier, but because it simplified their lives. Instead of checking the metal, they checked only one thing: was the stamp genuine? And here lies the deepest paradox. Before Croesus, value was determined by material. After Croesus, value was determined by trust in the authority that stamped it. This is the birth of a great illusion. A symbol can be worth more than the thing it's stamped on, if enough people believe in the power behind that symbol. 1,000 years later, the same logic would work with paper money. Another 1,000 years later, with the numbers on your phone screen. But the first step, that boldest step, was made by Croesus. The coin was not just a convenience for traders, it became an instrument of control. Previously, the king collected taxes in kind, grain, cattle. That had to be stored, moved, fed. Now Croesus ordered taxes to be paid in coins. Now the king had a liquid army. Coins are easy to divide, to pay mercenaries of any tribe. With coins you can buy weapons and provisions, and they are accepted everywhere, because everyone knows that stamp. Money became a technology of power, arguably the most effective until the printing press. But any power built on trust is fragile, and Croesus, without realizing it, had already planted a bomb under his own throne. To the east, Cyrus the Great was rising, a Persian king conquering one kingdom after another. Croesus saw him as a deadly threat. If he didn't stop Cyrus now, he would eventually reach Sardis. But Croesus wasn't just rich, he was ambitious. He decided to strike first, while Cyrus was still not fully strong. In those days, no serious campaign began without divine blessing, so Croesus sent envoys to Delphi, the most famous oracle in ancient Greece, asking, should he go to war with the Persians? The answer went down in history as one of the most famous examples of ambiguity. The priestess said, if Croesus crosses the river Halys and makes war on the Persians, he will destroy a great empire. Croesus was ecstatic. He heard exactly what he wanted to hear. He was sure it was Cyrus's empire. He assembled an army, made alliances, crossed the river, and invaded Persian lands. But Cyrus proved smarter and stronger. Persian cavalry and archers shattered Croesus's army. The king retreated to Sardis, but Cyrus besieged and stormed the city. The Lydian kingdom fell. Croesus was captured. A great empire was indeed destroyed, only it was Croesus's own empire. The oracle had not lied, it just hadn't specified whose empire. And here is the tragic irony, the reason this story is worth telling. The man who first made the world trust a symbol more than reality, he himself fell into the trap of trusting a symbol. He believed the oracle as blindly as merchants believed his coin. It seemed, the end, Croesus defeated, Lydia erased from the map. But Croesus's invention outlived him. The Persians, having captured Sardis, didn't destroy the monetary system, they copied it. Under one of the later Persian kings, they struck darics, gold coins of the same standard, only with a different image. The Greek cities that traded with Lydia quickly adopted the idea. Athens struck coins with an owl, Corinth with Pegasus, Aegina with a turtle. The idea of state-backed coinage spread across the Mediterranean faster than any army could have stopped it. Croesus lost his empire, but he won the world. He gave humanity a technology that depends on no single ruler. It is picked up by enemies, allies, and foreign kingdoms, and lives on even when its creator becomes a legend. Romans struck denarii, Venice or ducats, Spain, pieces of 8. Every power added its own symbol, but the principle remained unchanged, metal with the stamp of authority. The next step was even bolder, and it happened not in Europe, but in China, a millennium and a half later. By the 10th century, under the Song dynasty, paper money came into mass circulation. Early prototypes appeared even earlier, in 812 AD. And here is the true break with reality. Croesus's coin still contained precious metal. Melt it and you get gold. but a paper banknote contained nothing, only fiber and ink. Yet people accepted paper because it repeated the same formula. This has value, guaranteed by the state. Value had finally broken free from material. Money ceased to be a thing and became an idea, recorded on any convenient carrier. Today, when you wave your phone over a terminal, you see neither gold nor paper, only numbers on a screen, bits on a server thousands of miles away. And you trust those numbers exactly as the merchant in Sardis trusted the lion and the bull. Ask yourself, if tomorrow everyone stopped believing in money, what would be left? Nothing. Banks wouldn't open, cards wouldn't work, and the numbers on your screen would become just random characters. Because money isn't gold, paper, or electrons. Money is a shared belief. And that belief was born 2,500 years ago on the banks of the Pactolus River, when one king decided that his stamp was worth more than the truth of the metal. He proved that a symbol can be more valuable than reality. But here is the irony: the belief he created outlived him, his empire, his enemies, and every civilization since. It became the most powerful and most dangerous illusion we ever devised. Money works only as long as we agree to believe in it. Think about that the next time you swipe your card or check your balance. You are not working for paper, not for gold. You are working for an idea that exists only because everyone around you pretends it does. And perhaps the scariest part, if tomorrow we all stopped pretending, nothing would be left except each other.